Well, friends, we now have an unredacted version of the memo that Bill Barr used to spin and mischaracterize the Mueller report. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So at long last, we have an unredacted version of a memo that former Attorney General Bill Barr commissioned. A memo that he would use as cover to spin and mischaracterize the Mueller report. Those aren't my words, those are the words of Federal District Court Judge Reggie Walton, who ruled that Bill Barr spun the Mueller report, mischaracterized the Mueller report, and he went on to say that Bill Barr lacks candor. Well, we now have an unredacted version of that memo. Let's start with the reporting. This from NBC News. DOJ releases unredacted memo to Barr on Trump obstruction in Mueller probe. And that article begins, the Justice Department on Wednesday released the unredacted version of a 2019 memo that made the case to then AG William Barr that President Donald Trump should not be charged with obstruction of justice in the Russia investigation. Now, friends, what I want to do is just go through some of the lowlights of this 8-page memo. A memo that reads more like a public relations document drafted by Donald Trump's defense team. You know, it does not read like a legitimate legal analysis, and I'm going to give you some of the lowlights as to why that is so. I'm going to go through 3 or 4 points in this memo, stream of consciousness. Just bear with me for a minute, friends. So the memo is dated March 24th, 2019, and it starts out, at your request, we generated the following memo. Okay, who is the your of at your request? Attorney General Bill Barr. And we know he had an agenda in mind when he commissioned this memo. Who is the we? At your request, we generated this memo. Well, the we are Steve Engel. He was the torture memo guy. Remember him? Oh, and by the way, his nomination to be Assistant Attorney General was opposed by Senator John McCain. And the other author of this memo is a guy named Ed O'Callahan. He was, quote, one of the 3 leaders of Sarah Palin's Alaska Truth Squad. You can't make this stuff up, friends. Feel free to go online and read more of what Engel and O'Callahan did in their time with the government. Let's start with a nugget on page 3 of the memo. They note that there is no precedent for charging a criminal president with obstruction of justice in these circumstances. Friends, anytime you use in support of your argument that you can't charge a criminal president, the fact that there's no precedent, it's never been done before, it's kind of a circular argument. There's never going to be precedent until you do it for the first time. I understand we're not fond of holding criminal presidents accountable for their crimes. Just look back to Richard Nixon. But it's not a persuasive argument that it's never been done before, therefore we can't do it. The memo gets even worse. Let me talk about one of the instances of obstruction of justice that was documented by Bob Mueller in Volume 2 of the Mueller report. You'll probably remember there was a notorious incident where Donald Trump told his White House counsel, Don McGahn, to fire Bob Mueller, inferentially to put a stop to the investigation, to Mueller's investigation. Fire Bob Mueller. White House counsel Don McGahn said, nope, not going to do it. It could be perceived as obstructing justice. And then Donald Trump told Don McGahn, okay, if you won't do it, I'm going to need you to lie to everybody and tell everybody I never told you. to fire Bob Mueller. In fact, I'm going to need you to generate a false government document saying Trump never told you to fire Bob Mueller. You know what the authors of this memo say about that? They say, quote, "The president vehemently denied telling McGahn that he wanted to fire the special counsel, Bob Mueller." Well, you know what? That's not really evidence. You know why it's not really evidence? Because Donald Trump refused to sit for an interview with Bob Mueller's team about all of this. So the authors of this memo don't cite that as a fact that Donald Trump was covering up his own crimes, that he refused to sit down for an interview. Instead, they just reach to his public statements and they say, well, he vehemently denies telling Don McGahn to fire Bob Mueller. I'm sorry, that's not persuasive evidence. Donald Trump also vehemently claims the election was rigged, stolen, unfair, that he's still the president. I guess that would also persuade the authors of this memo that if Donald Trump says it, it must be true. Let's take on just one more example from this memo, and it is a beauty. The authors say, "We likewise do not believe that the president's public statements exhorting witnesses like Flynn, Manafort, Stone, or Cohen not to flip should be viewed as obstruction of justice." When the president was telling them, do not flip, do not cooperate with the Department of Justice, with the FBI, with the prosecutors, the authors of the memo don't view that as obstructing justice because the president equated a witness's decision to flip or cooperate with being induced by prosecutors to manufacture false evidence against others. We cannot say that the president's statements were intended to induce any of those witnesses to conceal truthful evidence or to provide false evidence. Are you kidding me? The authors of this memo say, oh, no. Donald Trump had nothing but the best intentions. You know, he just thought he was telling all of these witnesses who had incriminating information about him not to cooperate with the prosecutors because the prosecutors would invariably tell them to lie on the president. So the president was just trying to keep an injustice from happening. You've got to be kidding me. Throughout this memo, it really is as if the authors are saying, listen, Donald Trump's intentions have always been pure as the driven snow, right? Nothing but goodness and allegiance to the rule of law oozing out of Donald Trump. That's how this memo reads, friends. Like a public relations piece by Donald Trump's defense team instead of a legitimate legal analysis. And you know, when the authors say things like, Donald Trump just told Roger Stone, for example, to hold fast, don't cooperate, don't flip, don't snitch. It was just because Donald Trump didn't want Roger Stone to lie and implicate Donald Trump in crimes he hadn't committed. I think a fourth grader could dismiss that out of hand, with apologies to fourth graders. But even more importantly, there's a federal judge who dismissed it out of hand. Judge Amy Berman Jackson, at Roger Stone's sentencing, said, Mr. Stone, Defendant Stone, you weren't prosecuted and convicted on 7 felony counts because you were standing up for Donald Trump. You were convicted because you were covering up for Donald Trump. That's just not the way the authors of this memo see it. And on the very same day this memo is dated, Bill Barr stepped to the cameras and, in the words of Judge Reggie Walton, he spun the Mueller report. He mischaracterized the Mueller report. I will add, he lied about the Mueller report, thereby doing untold damage to our nation by covering up the crimes of Donald Trump. And for that, Bill Barr needs to be held accountable. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.